Welcome back into ARC Seattle. Let's dive right into the deep end. The election less than 3 weeks away, and believe it or not, there are still Americans who are undecided about who to vote for.
Yeah, a new poll from Ipsos found people who are undecided are not following the news closely. And joining us to continue the conversation is Mallory Newell, the Vice President of Ipsos Public Affairs. And it's nice to have you with us this morning. How are you?
Hi, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So walk us through some of the key findings of this poll. And yeah, we're like 20 days away from the election. What did you find?
Sure. As you mentioned, there are still some people who are undecided, not only who they're going to vote for, but if they're actually going to show up and vote on election day. That number is pretty small, though, around 5%. But people who are undecided about who to vote for or whether or not to vote, by definition, are not tuning into the news. So that's, why you might see candidates trying some sort of different strategies, going on podcasts, doing social media appearances, trying to reach those undecided folks, because by definition, they are not tuning in closely to mainstream media.
Yeah, I have seen an increase in both Harris and Trump making appearance on popular podcasts that attract younger voters. Mallory, did the poll take a closer look at what news sources some of those voters might be consuming? Is it just those podcasts? And did that change depending on their political affiliation?
I think the important takeaway when it comes to news consumption is that we're really living in a world where people have different realities, not just by their political affiliation, but by how they're consuming news, right? So someone who, for example, might watch kind of mainstream broadcast TV actually has a different outlook on the main issues facing the country than somebody who tunes in to, say, conservative online news or social media. Those who are undecided do tend to kind of fall more into the social media, maybe friends or family, or even just say none of the media sources listed. They're just completely tuning out.
You talked about social media. How much of a factor is that playing into where people are getting their updates from, with us being so close to Election Day?
That's a great question. Now we know that misinformation is certainly a concern. We've seen that in our polling across the past few years, not just as we get closer to Election Day. So there is a question of the level of trust, but not only trust in the information that people can receive on social media, but the trust that they can receive from the media writ large as well. So there's a declining level of trust that I think is contributing to some people just tuning out from more traditional media sources.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, what does this say about the upcoming election being so close? Could undecided voters make a huge impact on who's elected?
Oh, this cycle? Absolutely, yes. Our polling has shown, and I think you're seeing this in kind of the average of polling as well, that this is a remarkably close election. Could be just a game of inches. I think right now we're in a period where it truly is a toss-up. We know that some of the kind of fundamental or traditional indicators favor Donald Trump. He's seen as the candidate that's strongest on the economy, which is the main issue. But the vibes, the momentum are shifting in Kamala Harris's favor. And so I think absolutely, especially in the key battleground states, this could absolutely come down to turnout and the candidate's last-ditch efforts to either get people to the ballot box, but also to vote in favor of them.
Yeah, early voting already underway in about half the states right now, and our voting period here in Washington starts on this coming Friday. We know that you guys at Ipsos are always working on polls and surveys. I have to imagine there's more to come before Election Day. What are you working on?
Just constantly trying to understand the pulse of the electorate right now, keeping a close eye on what the main issue is and which candidate is seen as having an advantage. Trump historically has done better than Kamala Harris on this issue, but we've seen that gap starting to close a little bit. And I think you're seeing that reflected in both candidates' final pitches, right? Harris, I think, has a bigger challenge in the sense that she's trying to appeal to a broader array of voters. Trump's base is kind of more uniform, right? So you're seeing Kamala pitch her economic plan to Black men, trying to pull Republicans and disaffected people in the middle in as well. But really, who can drive home that winning message on the economy between here and Election Day, I think will be critical to keep an eye on.
Mallory, I realize I'm putting you on the spot by asking this question, but I don't know if you guys have looked at how much voter fatigue is playing into maybe these final weeks before Election Day. I have to imagine that a lot of voters have sort of just wanted to check out just because there's so much information and sound bites and all that kind of stuff that's being thrown at them in these final weeks.
Totally. Look, I'm joining you from a swing state. I live in Michigan, and I can attest to just being inundated with ads and mail pieces in the final weeks. And I'm sure that we are feeling some of that. Now, going back to undecided voters and people in the middle, I think that is one of the contributing factors to why they're just sort of tuning out news sources right now. They're going to non-traditional media or just saying that there's not anywhere, by definition, they don't have a main source of news, whether that's a decline in trust among institutions like the media, whether that's just being sick and tired of what they're hearing. We can't say, but I do think it could be a contributing factor.
Election fatigue is certainly a reality for many people. Thank you so much for joining us. We always appreciate hearing you guys' surveys. Ipsos is doing some really great work and research on this. Thank you.
Thanks.